Hello everyone and welcome back to Verses in the Fall. It's my favorite time of year. The air is crisp, the pumpkin spice tickles our senses, and football prevents me from having a girlfriend until at least February.
If you say so.
Oh, and the kiddies? Well, they're out trick-or-treating in homemade costumes, while the adults are out spending thousands of dollars turning any other occupation into sexy cosplay. For many, Halloween is their favorite holiday all the livelong year. Unless you happen to be a resident of Haddonfield, Illinois, where the only year you will live long is the one where you take a vacation during the October festivities. You see, Michael Myers lives there, and while he occasionally does travel or get behind the wheel of a car, he prefers to do his maiming, murdering, and muckraking in his hometown, where he started his career in killing at the tender age of 6. So to honor him here on Versus, we're taking a look back at the 3 films that focus on the origin story of Myers, where he got his big break by, killing people. It's Halloween 1978 taking on Halloween 2007, battling Halloween 2018, which is not a strict origin story, but it picks up from the events of the first one, so you see where we're going with here. Look, it's a lot of candy. It's a competitive feast of destruction, the likes of which no other horror movie icon could match. In one corner, you have the OG film from 1978, directed by John Carpenter on a budget that these days will buy you a quarter gallon of gas. The indie flick would go on to redefine the slasher movie genre. In the other corner, it's 2007's take on Myers, courtesy of rockstar director Rob Zombie, and featuring a Michael that was somehow even taller than his predecessor. And in the other corner, it's 2018's The Day After All Hallows Eve, directed by David Gordon Green and featuring some overzealous podcasters that accidentally reignite the original Mikey's thirst for killing. Podcasters, am I right? Was poking Michael Myers really worth saving 15% on all your shipping needs? Here's how we'll determine a winner. Round 1, box office. Round 2, Tomatometer/audience score. Round 3, big laughs. Round 4, I, Me, Mine. And then we'll do a wild card round that I'll try to name with the Beatles song, but they sang about love and peace and all that nonsense that Michael Myers really doesn't care for. He may not be as athletic as a Freddy Krueger or as funny as the Leprechaun.
Quick, okay now, kids.
But he's a much better swimmer than Jason. Any one of these 3 movies today has a claim to stake as far as the best October 31st based movie ever. Will it be the OG, the remake, or the reboot quill? I'm your host, Mark Ellis. I know the answer, and you're about to, if you make it through this video alive. I hope you will. Let's get it on.
You ever done anything like this before?
Round 1, box office. Well, Haddonfield may be the town that bears the brunt of Michael Myers' bastard brand of brawn, but every city across America lights up when a new Halloween tale hits their multiplex. And it seems like the folks, both in the United States and abroad, get particularly juiced when it's a retelling of the very first time Illinois got heartbroken by something other than the Bears. What, they haven't won since like 1985. It was 7 years before the Super Bowl shuffle that John Carpenter's Halloween descended upon the masses, and the returns were massive, especially when you consider that this film's budget was 8 shiny nickels and a song. Okay, it was actually a little over $300,000, but in Hollywood, even back in 1978, that was a literal shoestring. In today money, that inflates to just $1.3 million, which can't even buy you a condo in Tinseltown. You know what can? $47 million, which is what that first flick made back then, when we adjust for inflation, which is what I'll do even for the 2018 movie. That first entry surges to over $180 million. And it's always proof that maybe you kids should look into some sort of fiduciary investment strategy.
If you don't, it's your funeral.
If Carpenter's movie was a surprise hit back in the 70s, Rob Zombie's film wouldn't have shocked anyone if it did well. So I guess no one raised an eyebrow at the franchise once again scoring a hit, this time to the tune of $77 million on a budget of $15 million. That's still a relatively low production number back in 2007, especially when you factor in that Halloween was a known property. Or maybe perhaps it was too well known. You see, the films that followed the 1978 classic brought descending amounts of cash before the return of Jamie Lee Curtis as Laurie Strode in H2O, raking in $110 million. That is some smart water. Because H2O, I'm sorry, I'm lonely.
It's your own fault, and I don't feel a bit sorry for you.
Speaking of Miss Lee Curtis, 2018 saw her return in a revamped Halloween that would only honor the storyline from the original 1978 film. Everything else was banished to the retconverse, where all those Halloween 3 Season of the Witch fans still bob for apples every Friday night. By this point in the movie industry, folks like Blumhouse and A24 had mastered the model of micro budgets and maxi box office by leaning on scary stories, marketing, and opening up around the frightiest time of year. The 2018 pumpkin was ripe for the picking, and its first weekend in theaters smashed records with over $76 million in domestic coin. It would total $165 million on just a $10 million budget, which pretty much means that Rob Zombie's Halloween is going to have to wait until round 2 to hope for a W. But I will give it credit for rebounding a suddenly moribund franchise that had already used up all of its iconic characters for all that they were worth, or so we thought, and giving us a fresh take on the subject matter. And anytime your movie makes 5 times the budget, that is a studio that's happy. They're lighting up fancy cigars. 2018 Scary Movie made 25 times its budget, which may be the bragging rights that could edge it into victorious territory in round number 1. Hang on, let me do some math. Oh wait, never mind. The OG hauled in 225 times its production cost, making it quite possibly the most profitable thing in the history of things. I don't know how much a pet rock or a Rubik's Cube or a Beanie Baby cost to manufacture, but Michael Myers, he's cheap, and he slays in more ways than one. No wonder he has so many lifetime kills. We all keep showing up. 1978's Halloween takes the W here and surges ahead of its children 1-0.
It must be great living in denial. I must try it sometime.
Round 2, Tomatometer/audience score. But is that first flick even good? Yeah, it's really good. But how about the kids? We know they come from good stock, but how far did the apples fall from the tree? That's what's going to determine your winner in this round. How did the critics and audiences feel about the Halloween family? Do they prefer the patriarch, or are those silly children more fun?
Have you ever really liked a girl and you just couldn't have her?
Or is it Crazy Uncle Halloween 3, which doesn't feature Myers as a character at all?
You wouldn't believe how we did it.
Halloween 2018 had a whole big giant legacy to live up to, and indeed, it was up to the task. It notched a fresh 79% on the Tomatometer and a 71% on the audience score. That's some delicious ketchup all around, and it features a Rotten Tomatoes critics consensus that reads, Halloween largely wipes the slate clean after decades of disappointing sequels, ignoring increasingly elaborate mythology in favor of basic, yet still effective, ingredients. I see you, the consensus there. Getting a little catty, but come on, sometimes basic is the best.
Classic.
Yeah.
Nice.
It certainly worked for 1978, and that Halloween, okay, are you sitting down or walking slow on the treadmill like Michael Myers would? It's 96% certified fresh on the Tomatometer, tops among our contenders today, and pretty much all Halloween movies ever. The audience score is 89%, and it's probably only that low because so many folks initially watched the movie behind 2 nervous hands. Palm Sweaty, Mom Spaghetti, and now the critics' consensus for the original. Scary, suspenseful, and viscerally thrilling, Halloween set the standard for modern horror films. You're damn right it did. Look at everything from Freddy to Jason to It Follows to The Strangers to Freddy vs. Jason. You know, those two should team up and battle Mike.
Welcome to my nightmare.
Well, battling both 1978 and its immediate sequel, 40 years later, is Rob Zombie's 2007 version. It was different in terms of tone, imagery, story, cast, yet its Tomatometer score indicates a miss with the critics to the tune of just 28%. Just a bit outside.
Lay out the candy corn, kid.
That's sacrilege for me, just because Malcolm frickin' McDowell is in it. Luckily, the audience score rebounds, notching a fresh adjacent 59%, which I will point out is more than double than that of Season of the Witch, and it places Halloween 2007 fifth all-time in terms of those franchise movies with the audience. But the critics' consensus puts the nail in the coffin for 2007's hopes of winning round 2. Rob Zombie doesn't bring many new ideas to the table in Halloween, making it another bloody disappointment for fans of the franchise. Whoa, we got British and cheeky with that consensus. But the good news for this entry is that Michael Myers, he always comes back. Kind of like a zombie? Because you get it. Halloween 2018 performed well here and certainly poses a threat to the original classic in this match, But in a round that will be won by the best of the best, critics and audiences agree it's John Carpenter's classic. Hey, that guy's pretty good, right? So The Thing is 83%, They Live is 85%, Escape from New York is 86%, and tied with Halloween's 96% is, you guessed it, the original, 1976 Assault on Precinct 13. Parts 1 through 12 were apparently trash, but 13 was awesome. The OG Halloween wins round 2 and goes up 2-0 to nothing.
Okay, I've had enough.
Round 3, big laughs. I'll be honest, there's not a whole lot in these movies for comedy fans, despite the fact that one of the funniest humans ever, Danny McBride, is a producer and screenwriter for this most recent Halloween trilogy.
You want a banh mi sandwich?
A what? What is that?
A banh mi sandwich.
What is that? I don't even know what that is.
I love that about you, Francis. You're so predictable.
So why on earth and hell is this round called Big Laughs? Well, you see, when a comedian gets big chuckles, we call it killing. We say, I murdered, I decimated, I laid waste to an entire town on October 31st. I've actually never said that last one after a set, but we all have to have goals. So we'll actually spend round 3 examining which of our 3 films features the best, most creative kills in the series. Viewers be warned, it's about to get red on your screen, and those ain't tomatoes. Although some movies have used ketchup as stage blood. Enjoy your french fries.
That sounds disgusting.
Halloween from the Super 70s may not have bragging rights in terms of kill quantity, but it more than makes up for that with quality. And it was a simpler time. Remember, this movie came out before 1987's RoboCop, which really changed the whole kill game. Go back and watch it. Michael Myers may not have great stats here, but he's off to a hot start in an iconic scene in terms of both scares and filmmaking. Carpenter opens the film with a Steadicam shot giving you Mikey's perspective as he creeps into his older sister's room and offs her. He's what, 6? The movie's barely 5 minutes long and boom, no more big sis to boss you around. We also learn just how strong Myers became as an adult personification of evil. He stabs poor Bob, lifts him up in the air with the knife, and no insurance is going to cover that.
This isn't a man.
We also get hints at Michael's resourcefulness. Anyone can win a fight with demon strength and a knife, but he dusts Linda with a phone cord. It's at this point that I will point out another sad fact. He does take out a dog in this movie. This is before Marley and Me, before Turner and Hooch, before Independence Day taught us that you can be scary and still save the puppy. If only that dog's daddy was John Wick. Ooh, that's a good matchup. They're both considered boogeymen, right?
The boogeyman is coming.
Wick, Myers, let's hope we get picked up for another season.
There's no such thing.
2007 saw loads more carnage, mayhem, and gore. It's not a shock considering director Rob Zombie's legendary musical career has spawned hits like Demon Speeding and Dragula. The dude likes him some horror, and in this take on Halloween, Michael Myers is capable of wiping out whole families. He kills Wesley and his stepdad within the first 20 minutes of the movie. I will say at least one of them had it coming. Then he makes quick work of his sister with a knife, her boyfriend with a baseball bat, and then he takes down an entire precinct of cops. Not Precinct 13, though. They would not stand for that. You toss in a few nurses, some guards, and then we get more free thinking from our heinous villain. He sticks Bobby against a wall and then slices and dices and snaps necks right up until the final credits roll. This version features the most kills of any Halloween origin story, racking up 21 kills, which is 5 more than Walter Payton's touchdown total in his best season.
You are so demented.
Michael does come back strong in 2018, notching 17 total kills. He got off to a slow start because at the film's outset, he's incarcerated, happy to pass the time by himself on a tetherball court. But then some neck snapping ensues, he escapes, and that poor gas station employee. Look, sure, working at AM PM scores you free hot dogs and Doritos, but you also have to check the bathrooms occasionally, and this poor sap gets his jaw ripped out. Look, I told you this nut bar was strong.
There's nothing to learn. There are no new insights.
All the tools in the shed get involved in 2018. Gina gets off with a hammer, Andrea and Vicky get stabbed, Oscar gets impaled, and Dave, well, he gets what will now be known as bobbed. He's stuck to the wall. Interior decorating is all about having a unique vision.
Dude, have some discretion, all right?
I feel most bad for Ray. He hangs around trying to keep a family as together as they can be, and he lasts a while.
This is my home and I can take care of my own family, all right?
It's almost 90 minutes into the movie before he finally gets strangled, and at least we'll finally remember him as the last kill in the film. Then a bunch of firefighters are a little too fast to respond, and they get housed in the sequel, which is accurately titled Halloween Kills. You're damn right it does.
A lot of nutcases come out on Halloween.
Mike also gets pretty beat up in the original movie. He even tumbles out the window, falling to his death. Well, until you look again and you see nothing but some grassy divots. He got away, as he did in 2007, where both him and Laurie took a spill. Happily, they both survived. Look, I'm trying to put a positive spin on things here, but if we're judging kills on effectiveness, tactics, and awarding some bonus points for creativity, this round is between the two more recent rebooties. And in 2007, Rob Zombie lived up to his own hype and surpassed the previous films with the visceral look of the carnage. Annie's scene takes forever, but it's spellbinding and gratuitous, and him taking out the character of Judith surpasses the 1978 version for me. If you needed more evidence that Zombie's film was ready for a win, you know who Michael gets in 2007? Danny frickin' Trejo.
Don't do nothing we're both gonna regret later, okay, Mikey?
The dude is practically indestructible in every movie. He makes delicious donuts and tacos here in LA, and he meets his end with a truly mean kill. It's not necessarily Trejo's head on a turtle like in Breaking Bad, but it got the job done, and it's good for a win in round 3. Halloween 2007 gets on the board, and it's 2-1-0.
Oh, yeah? We'll see about that.
Round 4, I Me Mine. Maybe this Beatles tune reflected the changing priorities of the band in George Harrison's view, but here it's going to be about Michael Myers himself, his presence, his legacy, the actors who played him, and which on-screen version is truly the scariest. So if we start with last round's winner, Halloween 2007, then we're kicking things off with the largest, most looming, shout out to the good doctor, Myers ever, Tyler Mane, all 6'9" of him, stepped into the legendary role for some intense mayhem in both of the Rob Zombie movies. Zombie was successful with his goal of reinventing Michael, as he felt the character had become too stale and familiar, in the same way that we knew every nook, cranny, and tendency of fellow Hall of Famers like Freddy, Jason, and Pinhead. Zombie concluded that this familiarity with the character made him more predictable and less scary, and he wanted to redefine who the hell this person was. He knew he was on the right path thanks to a conversation with none other than John Carpenter himself. Out of respect, before the announcement that Rob would be helming this project, he called Carpenter to deliver the news personally. John's advice was to make it his own, and I'd say, mission accomplished. But if someone or thing, I'm not really sure which one best describes Michael, is to be invented at all, it helps to have someone create you out of thin air. Thus, The Shape was born out of John Carpenter's and Deborah Hill's imagination, with some help from field research that included visiting mental institutions. Carpenter studied the more serious cases, and his conclusion wasn't all that dissimilar from Dr. Loomis's line in the first film, delivered by the great Donald Pleasance. Make him human, yes, but almost like a force that will never stop, that can't be denied. Michael is more than just a villain or even an archetype. He's the physical embodiment of evil itself.
A perfect storm, if you will.
You can't stop evil, you can only hope to contain it. Thus, we were bestowed the story of the most evil kid that ever walked during the most perfect time of the year for such a premise. 2018 saw a return to that original subject matter and was a welcome back for original Michael Myers performer Nick Castle. There's just something special about having that guy and that William Shatner mask back. Yeah, it's true. The guy gets work, so does his mask. Castle didn't do the stunt work for 2018, but it's his model that defines how Myers operated in both films, even with them being 40 years apart. The newer sequel was termed a reboot quill by the filmmakers, but the flick plays out much simpler. Lots of scares, violence, and throwbacks to the original. Yet it somehow also gave us a deeper insight into who Michael Myers is and what his intentions are, and have always been. 1978 showcased a kid born bad who grew from evil. 2007 was that person on steroids and PEDs and whatever serum Captain America was huffing. But it wasn't until 2018 that we saw the lengths that Myers is willing to go once he gets back on his program. He seemed, content in a sort of jailed retirement, but then those damn podcasters...
We're investigative journalists.
...who can get you up to 20% off if you use the promo code MORON, just had to go and toss the OG mask in front of him. Much like Steve Martin discovering his purpose in The Jerk, Myers had refound his fuel and goes to greater lengths than ever before, according to this canon, to once and for all take down Laurie Strode and anyone else in his way. Laurie herself is much better competition in this film, having lived a life dedicated to the preparation of Mike's inevitable return.
I have tried to protect you and prepare you. Now we have to hunt him down.
It certainly was a welcome one for us fans and a terrifying one for Haddonfield, but it's proof that with age comes wisdom.
That's the idea.
And in this case, those additional smarts arrive with murderous intention.
Happy Halloween, Michael.
Myers has always been among the scariest forces in cinematic history, but his own legacy earned another feather in its cap with the reboot quill. It's always a risk to go back to the well, but here it earned more buckets of H2O. But it's H40 taking the round for its first win today, and it's still anyone's ball game as we head into the final phase, 2-1-1.
This is ridiculous.
And now it's time for the wild card round, best of the best. With all apologies to Eric Roberts and the rest of the elite martial artists in the best of the best film franchise, this round, and possibly the match, could be won by which Halloween movie holds up as the best in terms of story, acting, execution, that's literal and figurative, and most importantly of all, scares. If you call yourself a horror movie, you gotta be frightening. And if you want to be considered the greatest Halloween film ever, you probably shouldn't be named Pumpkinhead.
I'm the one you want!
If you think this round is going to be a Michael Myers-paced stroll in the park for the 1978 classic, then you're more gullible than most every law enforcement member depicted in these films.
Was a Halloween prank.
Sure, it earned some stripes for being the first, but did you know it was kind of inspired by another movie? Black Christmas had come out a few years earlier, and John Carpenter loved it. In fact, Black Christmas director Bob Clark mentioned that Carpenter asked him what he would do if there was a sequel to the Christmas Horror Fest. Clark responded that he wasn't really into sequels, but if he did it, it would be the same killer, escaped, and back at it the next year, and he'd title it Halloween. Now, by Bob Clark's own admission, Carpenter didn't steal that title or premise. The script had actually already been called Halloween, but he did glean inspiration from it, and if the name Bob Clark sounds familiar, he went on to helm the raunchy teen comedy classic Porky's, which did have a couple sequels that you really don't need to see. But how about those Halloween sequels? Season of the Witch is pretty cool. Am I right?
I have the feeling that you're way off on this.
H2O is also great, but not in competition today, so let's take a look at the most recent version from 2018. If its elder of 40 years helped launch the slasher movie genre into the stratosphere, this newer model was a continuation of the notion that horror movies can be super entertaining, make a lot of dough, and reinvigorate a franchise, all while saving tons of money.
I told everybody!
The biggest issue with 2018 for me is that while the premise is aces and the feel resembles the first film, some of these characters make decisions that are so mind-numbingly stupid it threatens to derail the proceedings. The most egregious example being New Loomis, who is so enthralled with the case study that is Michael that he kind of encourages an escape late in the film just to watch it. Did you really need more proof? And did you actually think you'd be somehow spared? Come on, man.
So many possibilities exist.
The film rebounds with a thrilling climax showing us Laurie Strode's booby-trapped paradise so well planned it would make Kevin McAllister blush.
Yes!
The return of both Jamie Lee Curtis and Nick Castle to the franchise was welcome, and the addition of the always great Judy Greer added as well. Toss in a heaping helping of nods to the original, and you got yourself a movie that runs much more than it stumbles. My favorite ode is the body swap reverse of 1978's Denouement, wherein Michael pushes Laurie out the window late in the movie, but when he looks back, she's gone. She Michaeled Myers. What a play!
I'm glad you got to see that.
2007 leaned into its director's bold new vision and was a much-needed breath of fresh air away from the tiresome sequels, except H2O and Season of the Witch, but too often it leaned on the torturous violence that popularized the era of horror movies instead of taking a cue from what makes slashers so engaging. The buildup and the suspense is just as good, if not better, than the ultimate payoff. Look at Jaws, which is a great aquatic slasher movie. We barely ever see Bruce the Shark, but we're terrified of him the entire movie. 1978's Halloween had a much more compliant villain with Michael, but he's lurking in the shadows as much as he is the forefront. He has just 6 kills in that film. But more so than the bloody gore, it's the images that stick with us when something goes bump in the night. Michael creeping around a laundry line, disappearing just when we thought we had him, and re-emerging when it's too late for our victims to pivot. Beyond the film's exceptional quality itself, it was like flashing the bat signal for all future filmmakers who had conviction and a great story, but might have been a little short on cash. Just like Easy Rider and Star Wars in different sections of Blockbuster, Halloween proved that audiences do crave stories that stick to our ribs, and if it's compelling enough material, it doesn't need to cost a fortune. And for that movie to still deliver in terms of technique, performances, pacing, and above all else, scares, is proof that some movies can transcend their own generation to become timeless. Much to the chagrin of everyone that lives in Haddonfield, again, I cannot stress this enough, go on vacation.
What are we gonna do? Cancel Halloween?
1978's Halloween wins the wild card round and thus takes the match.
Sometimes I can't tell the difference between your stupidity and your ignorance.
Congrats to the OG, but keep in mind, anytime you make a successful horror movie or remake one that delights audiences by, frightening the crap out of us, you've done your job. You're all winners here today. The only loser is probably me, because I've upset 2 Halloween movies and 1 super tall Michael Myers. I'm gonna sleep with one eye open. And I will remind everyone that this is just my opinion. Give me your take at Mark Ellis Live, and stay tuned right here at Rotten Tomatoes for all the latest and greatest in terms of scary stuff streaming, in movie theaters, on television. Enjoy. Thanks for watching Versus. I'm Mark Ellis, and enjoy your vacation, Haddonfield Halloweeners. Go somewhere else. Not California, though, because I live here, and Mikey did come out west one time in H2O. So me, I'll be in Barbados until Thanksgiving. Treat, no trick.